Okay, so we have a good number of attendees now. So we will start. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to one of the Saudi Patient Safety Center educational activities. My name is Dr. Rakan Al-Mughir. I'm the head of healthcare provider empowerment at SPSC. We'll be having a workshop today about root cause analysis. It will be like 5 hours long. In this workshop, we'll discuss, we'll highlight the importance of and different types of reporting. We'll highlight the SPSC Sentinel Event Manual. We will discuss the decision to conduct root cause analysis, illustrate characteristics of Good RCA, explain process steps to complete an RCA, highlight the importance of patient and family engagement, discuss the importance of communicating improvement to staff, highlight supportive tools that will aid in the RCA process, and in the end, we'll have a case study by Dr. Mohammed Al-Wadi. Our presenters for today, first we'll have Dr. Badr Al-Shtadi. He will be introducing the course and giving the definition and what is root cause analysis, its importance, and why we need to conduct the RCA. Then we will move to Dr. Rawan Al-Sultan, who is the head of learning and reporting, who will highlight some important information about team formation. Then we will move to Dr. Ataf Al-Abedan. She's a senior specialist at the Saudi Patient Safety Center. She will be talking about finding the root causes and the true root causes. We will break for 15 minutes afterwards, and then I will start with the actions and measurement. Then we will have the case study by Dr. Mohammed Al-Wadi, who's a senior manager at the Saudi Patient Safety Center. We have with us now Dr. Badr Al-Shtadi. Dr. Badr, you can start.
Thank you, Dr. Rakan. Assalamu alaikum. This is Badr Al-Shtadi. I'm the head of Cultural Improvement Section at the Saudi Patient Safety Center. It's my pleasure today to be with you in this workshop. My presentation will start with the first part of the workshop, which is the introduction to the root cause analysis. Next. Okay, so our introduction, today we will be talking about importance of reporting, the different types of event, the SPSC Sentinel Event Manual, when to conduct an RCA, and how to prioritize your safety event, and what are the characteristics of Good RCA. So first, why do we report and analyze event? So reporting hazards, risk, and adverse event, it should be the fuel for the safety improvement engine for whichever healthcare organization. As we all know that the organization is made up of people, and if the people aren't motivated to report, then the organization has a definite disadvantage. As we all know that organization cannot fix problem if they don't know that it's existing. So how do we know that we need to fix problems? How do we know that we have safety gaps? Is by reporting. The first step is reporting, and the second step is to analyze these safety events correctly and with a scientific methodology, and after that to build a corrective action plan. So reporting and acting upon event has a well-documented evidence in the literature that when you invest on time, people, money to correct and identify safety gaps, you will have a clear reflected return of investment. This is a part of improving the safety of all patients, which is the initial and ultimate goal. Next, please. So if we look at last year, I will be happy to share with you the last year some of the sentinel event report from the Saudi Patient Safety Center, and we can see that there were like 229 contributing factors that were reported and classified under 9 categories. And this is really important. Whenever you are doing your RCA, you need to break down your analysis and your report to know where does the pain exist exactly. Is it a process issue? It's a communication or information issue? Is the human factor, manpower, planning issue, and etc. Next, please. When we look to the Saudi Patient Safety Hospital Survey and Patient Safety Culture Cycle 4 this year, and we see the lowest scored domain, we can see clearly for the second year, last year, the lowest score domain was response to error. This year, it was the second lowest scored domain, which is response to error. Only 55% of respondents reported that they are treated fairly when they make a mistake, and there is a focus on learning from mistakes rather than blaming culture, and the staff involved in the error, they will have a clear supporting program. Next. So again, looking back to the previous cycle of patient safety culture, this is really important to notice that around 70,000, more than the 70,000 people, around 49% of respondents did not report any safety event in the past 12 months. We are not talking about sentinel event, major patient safety event. They didn't report any safety event in the last year. And this clearly shows that we need to work on the patient safety culture and to implement a really just culture in all of our organization. This will help us in getting more data. Whenever we see more adverse event, more data, more people to submit their data, the more we can work on it and improve the patient safety. So if we look to the anatomy of error, where do error or mistakes fits in? So it's either commission, which is doing something wrong, or omission, which is failing to do the right thing, both of which will lead to undesirable outcome. And this is very important, or a significant potential for such an outcome. So we all know that many errors do not result in adverse event. So next, please. So what are the different types of events? As we all know, there are multiple types of events, multiple definitions of safety events, but in general, most of the safety patient experts, they agree on that there are some near misses, or what we call good catches, and other adverse events, which we can divide it to preventable and non-preventable adverse event. And before we leave that, I should add that some safety experts argue the distinction between preventable and non-preventable safety event or adverse event by reminding us that there are some certain type of harm we previously thought it was totally unpreventable. Now they are well known to be preventable with better system. The strongest, maybe it might be the strongest support for this argument, it comes from the story of the central line associated bloodstream infection. Nowadays, we know that some hospitals around the world, they have zero central line associated infection. And this adverse event were once felt to be an inevitable byproduct of modern medicine, but are now known to be largely preventable with the consistent application of bundle, checklist, and etc. So next, please. So what is root cause analysis? Our subject today, our workshop, is talking about root cause analysis. So it's the process of identifying the source of problem and to look for a solution in a way that the problem is treated at its root level. This way, organization professionals can look beyond the symptoms of the problem and work where the real pain, the real cause exists. So really, root cause analysis is about, next please, it's about looking towards what happened, why did it happen, and how to prevent it from happening again. We should focus on how and why, not on who did that. Next, please. So let's talk a little bit about the term itself, RCA, root cause analysis. Some people, they argue that this term somehow is problematic and does not really describe the activity. And this is in 2 points. The first point, that it tells us, or it might, some people might understand that there is only one root cause of a problem, which is counter to the fact that the healthcare is complex. And usually, and most of the people here who did an RCA before, they will know that most of the cases, they will have more than one cause or more than one root cause of the problem. And they will have many contributing factors that must be considered in understanding why an event has occurred. Second, when we say root cause analysis, it only identifies that we are doing this for analysis. But this is not only the intended or principal objective. We know that we are doing that to build a corrective action plan. So we know this is complex, and in the light of this complexity, there is no magic bullet that will address the various hazards and risks in our system. It might be better not to use the term root cause analysis, lakin it's so embedded in the patient safety culture that completely renaming the process could cause confusion. So can we go next, please? So what we are talking today about is root cause analysis and action, root cause analysis squared, which is the really objective end outcome or end result of root cause is to have a clear analysis of the root causes and to build a corrective action plan. Next. So as we see here, and this is, we can implement this even in our daily life. Whatever we have a problem, whatever symptoms you have, above the surface we see, we need to dig deeper to find the root causes of a problem. It might be root causes, not only one cause. So remember, whenever you have a safety event, try to connect that to whatever disease you know. It's like a symptoms, but we need to know what is the real diagnosis, what are the real causes of that problem. Next, please. So allow me, please, to take you through the journey of Sentinel event manual, which was done by the Saudi Healthcare Sentinel, by the Saudi Patient Safety Center after a multiple workshops, teamwork, task force team with multiple stakeholders. As we all know, one of the Saudi Patient Safety Center goals is toward the elimination of preventable harm to patients and to the healthcare professionals. And it's part of the national agenda of 2030 vision. So one of our mandate in the center is to standardize and unify the Sentinel event definition, in which we released the Sentinel event manual a year ago. This manual, it provides healthcare facilities and healthcare facilities governing sectors a list of reportable Sentinel event with a specific definition, inclusion and exclusion criteria. It really provides a step-by-step guide that standardizes the process of reporting and investigation. Upon developing this Sentinel event, the Saudi Patient Safety Center portal was starting to receive the data in September 2021. And after that, we released the targeted patient safety priorities. And the purpose of targeted patient safety priorities is for the healthcare facilities to identify, inspire, and mobilize widespread national adaptation of patient safety initiatives that targeted the most common contributing factor or root causes of the problem. And by reviewing the Sentinel event manual, Sentinel events that we received, the Saudi Patient Safety Center identified multiple safety issues that we believed should be highlighted, and patient safety initiatives should be directed towards these targeted patient safety. And the first one was improving sentinel event reporting and analysis. As we see that the number of reporting is below the expectation, and also the quality of reported event is below the expectations. Other than that, surgical count, suicidal patient, blood transfusion, preoperative assessment, medication, VTE, and medical devices. Next, please. So how does the Saudi Patient Safety Center develop this manual? So in the beginning, we established the task force team from multiple national stakeholders, and then we did multiple mapping exercise with the available national and international list of reportable sentinel event. After that, we developed the proposed list of sentinel event, which include the methodology to report and handle these event. And we made sure that all of the stakeholders, they are engaged and consulted all over the process. Next. So after that, we have the initial draft of Saudi Healthcare Sentinel Event Manual. We shared this draft with multiple stakeholders, multiple subject matter experts. We get their feedbacks, we work on them, and then we released the Saudi Patient Sentinel Manual. Next. So before we start, the inclusion criteria for the Sentinel event, it's very simple, 3 things. The event should be globally recognized as totally preventable. It should never happen. The event includes the failure of a system or process, and the event can be clearly measurable and identifiable. Next. Here we can see the reportable Sentinel event list. This contains 27 Sentinel events, and the Saudi Patient Safety Center is working closely with all stakeholders. We are reviewing the data that we have to always looking back and try to update this list if applicable. And I highly recommend you to visit the Saudi Patient Safety Center website. You will have this manual. You can go through it. Next. We'll have 2 examples of those reportable event. So the first one is Sentinel event number 3, discharge of a minor patient to unauthorized person. Each event, when you look to the manual, and you can find it again in the website, they will have a clear event description, inclusion and exclusion criteria. For example, here there is no exclusion criteria. Next, please. When we see this event, medication error leading to death, permanent or severe temporary harm, again, there is a clear event description, inclusion and exclusion criteria. For example, the exclusion criteria here were medical error related to unknown allergy. Next. So how the Saudi Patient Safety Center built the reporting and management system, as we can see in the next slide. So this manual outlined the general guidelines for identifying internal investigation, reporting, managing the sentinel event within a healthcare facility. Also, the subsequent submission of root cause analysis and corrective action plan to the healthcare facility governing sector and the Saudi Patient Safety Center. We should clearly say that all sentinel event information submitted to the Saudi Patient Safety Center is considered private and confidential. Once we identified that this is a sentinel event, we can see the next slide. The management of the sentinel event. So it should we should notify the healthcare facility governing sector within the specified time frame, assign an RCA team, and disclose the event to the patient and family. After that, we need to conduct an RCA and the corrective action plan exercise. Then we need to submit these RCA and corrective action plan to the healthcare facility covering sectors. And after that, this should be submitted on the SPSC portal, and this should be within 30 working days. Next. Within this manual, we can see, as I said earlier, it has a step-by-step guide. I highly recommend you to standardize the process in your hospital, whether to use this manual if you're working in Saudi Arabia, or other manuals or other recommendation, but it's really important to standardize the process to have a clear outline and structure. I will not go in depth describing the triggering question, the contributing factor, the corrective action plan. My colleague Dr. Tarfa will go through it, but I'm just trying to highlight that we need to standardize this process, and you can go to the website and go to see this step-by-step approach. And also Dr. Mohammed Al-Wadi will take us through it at the end of this workshop. Next. So this is a very important question, when to conduct an RCA. So generally speaking, ideally speaking, RCA are required for whatever safety event, whether it's a sentinel event, it's a serious safety event, it's a close call, it's a safety event that have a major adverse event. Whatever safety event, whatever event you have in your organization, you can conduct an RCA. But sometimes it takes time, people, and effort. So if we see the next slide, how do we prioritize the patient safety event? Generally, organization or people can be divided into two types or two ways of prioritizing event: risk-based RCA prioritizing system or harm-based approach. The risk-based, usually we prioritize safety hazards that might not have caused harm yet, but these have a clear potential to cause harm. And by doing risk-based RCA prioritizing system, we can find the safety gap and try to mitigate it or eliminate that safety gap before harm occur. The second approach, which is the most common used one, is a harm-based approach. The event must cause harm to the patient to warrant an RCA. So when we think about it, the risk-based, this thinking is consistent with successful practice in many high reliability industries, such as aviation. And it's well-recommended approach for various healthcare accreditation organizations, but again, it takes time and it takes effort. Some may believe that if there was no patient safety injury or no patient safety harm, close call or risk or near misses do not need to be reported or investigated. However, evidence says that close call occurs 10 to 300 times more frequently than the actual harm event. And it's really provide an organization the opportunity to identify and correct system gaps before injury or death occurs. So if we look to the next slide, there are multiple safety assessment metrics in the market. So it's a very good idea to have a risk-based prioritization methodology to rank these safety events. Some healthcare organizations, they might decide that all sentinel event, we should do an RCA for all sentinel event, and then they are use some of the safety assessment code matrix to identify or choose other safety event that can be analyzed. This is a great idea because sometimes it's very difficult to analyze all of the safety events. If we go next, the last two slides, we will talk about the characteristic of a good RCA. So when we can say this is an good RCA, first, the review should take less than 45 days to complete. It should have well-identified contributing factor, and those contributing factors should be based on a supporting data, supporting evidence and information. We should have a causal statement or root cause for each contributing factor. So we have like a contributing factor or process issue. For this process issue, we need to identify the root causes that should comply with the 5 rules of causation. After that, we should have a corrective action for each statement that should include at least one strong and one intermediate strength action. And my colleague, Dr. Rakan Al-Mughir, will talk more in depth about this strong action. There should be an action follow-up assigned to a person, group, and committee. This is very important. So if we do a root cause analysis, a very good root cause analysis, and then we build a very robust corrective action plan. If it's not assigned to a person or group or committee to implement, so we will lose the whole effort which were put in this RCA. This responsible person or group or committee, they should have a clear targeted day for completion of each action. If we go to the next slide, what are the characteristic sign of or warning sign of ineffective RCA? It's completely the opposite. So if you don't have a well-identified contributing factor, well-identified root causes, you don't have a corrective action plan, you didn't identify the team, you took more than 45 days to complete the RCA, there is no clear group or person to implement the corrective action plan, there is no clear time frame, etc. Why we are mentioning this? Because whenever you have these warning signs of ineffective RCA, this RCA should be re-examined and revised, because we cannot build conclusion based on these RCA, which was lacking a lot of important element of successful RCA. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy it. This really was an introduction to the course. As we go with Dr. Rawan, Dr. Tarfan, Dr. Rakan, and Dr. Muhammad will have a clear understanding of the whole process. We kind of talked quickly about the manual, how to prioritize event, how to set an RCA, but we will be talking more in depth in the next lectures.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you
for your lecture. There are some questions in the Q&A section, and I would like to remind all of the attendees to post their Q&A in the Q&A sections. The first question is, could we have the Healthcare Sentinel event manual? I think we can answer this. You can find it in the website of the Saudi Patient Safety Center. Another question, I know it is not the scope of this workshop, but as I forgot to introduce Dr. Badr, his position as the head of culture improvement in the Saudi Patient Safety Center. This question is asking, one of the fears of reporting sentinel events is legal actions. How did we address this in encouraging a reporting culture in a hospital?
Thank you, Rakan. So we all know as a healthcare worker, this is a real concern for each one of us. If I identify a patient safety risk, or if I did a mistake when I report this, they will label me, or should they have any legal consequences? I mean, this is really beyond the scope of the lecture, and it's very difficult to answer. Like in general, this really need a leadership support, and we need to implement a just culture to move from blaming culture to a learning culture. So we all know whenever you work in a healthcare organization, let's try just to remember whatever case you have listened about it or you heard about it. For example, a patient, there was a medication error in ward 24, for example. We usually tend to ask, who did this? Why they did this? This is very simple. If we change our thinking to why does this happen? What happened exactly? How we can prevent this from happening again? And it really, this is a problem, this is an international problem, not only in our country, but we really, based on the Saudi patient safety culture survey in the cycle 4, we really have identified that the response to error in our system needs to be, I would say, corrected. You need to implement a just culture. And we leaders really need to show their support to the staff. We really need to have a supporting staff supporting program, so people will be motivated to report events without fearing of disciplinary action.
Thank you so much. We have Adil Batawil. He's asking, what do you mean by human factors as a cause of sentinel event? Please give an example. I think this will come in the upcoming lectures. The second question is that there are now 3 entities to submit the sentinel event to their portal. Is there a plan to streamline this, as this causes a lot of extra work and confusion? All the authorities are working to streamline this reporting mechanism to a single entity. Inshallah, in the future, we'll have a clear vision of how reporting will be done. Why 45 days is a characteristic of good RCA? This is the question.
Okay, so if you look back to the Saudi Patient Safety Manual, we said 30 days, we mean working days. Then 45 days, it was recommended by multiple international organizations. Really, there were no, it's not evidence-based that we should do it like 45 days. If we do it in 50 days, it's not good. But it's like a standardization of a process. Multiple international organizations, GCI, etc., they recommend 45 days. It really shouldn't take more than this to identify the problem, to analyze it. And if you have worked before in an RCA, 45 days is really enough time frame, because you need, after this RCA, to build your action plan. Sometimes your RCA is not that maybe conclusive. You might to re-examine, revise. So it's not based on evidence-based, rather than it's an international agreement about these days.
Thank you so much, Dr. Badr. We'll move on to Dr. Rawan Sultan. As I said before, she's the head of learning and reporting. Dr. Rawan, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Rakan. Good morning, everyone. This is Rawan Sultan. During my presentation, I will go through the preparation for an RCA. So the outline of my presentation, I will go through the timing for RCA conduction, the team formation, and the role of each member, how to collect the resources, and then how to describe what happened. Lastly, I will go through the engagement of the patient and family and the leadership role. So the root cause analysis process, it's usually started by at first by the internal reporting. And then the first thing to do is to appoint a team leader and create the RCA team. The aim of this team is to identify the basic or the contributing factor that underlie the variation in performance associated with the adverse event or the close call. So the immediate action after the internal reporting is to assure the safety of the patient. You have to make sure that all the necessary investigation or management have been taken to the patient, and he is or she is currently in a good condition. Later, you have to establish or appoint the root cause analysis team leader, which is a decision of the healthcare facility leader or director. This should be within 24 hours up to 72 based on the policy of the hospital. The aim at the end is to report the root cause analysis or the sentinel event RCA and CAP to the facility or to SPSC or to the reporting portal within 30 working days up to 45 days. The aim is to have a fresh investigation and to prevent losing some evidence. The team formation, usually the members consist of 4 to 6 individual. The fixed members will be leader, subject matter expert, root cause analysis facilitator, and frontliner. The individual who is involved in the event directly and the patient, also the family, they can be interviewed instead of being a member of the RCA. So the responsibility of the team, RCA team, is to provide the support to the staff involved in the event, to initiate the investigation, also to interview the staff and the family, the patient and the family. They have to come up with the root cause analysis and contributing factor. At the end, they have to come up with the corrective action with assigned responsibility and to follow the implementation of the corrective action. And also it's important to make sure the RCA team, they have to make sure to disclose the events. The role of each member, the leader at the first, the leader have to, who is the individual most familiar with RCA process and he has the most necessary knowledge to track the team and to provide the necessary components of the event investigation. The facilitator is the most experienced in RCA process and its milestone associated with each phase. The subject matter expert is the one who is the most experienced in the area being investigated, while he is not involved in the events itself. A frontline staff is an individual unfamiliar with the area and was not involved in that. So each member has different role, but they work as a team to have a complementary effort. The facilitator will facilitate the process. The leader will have the decision, while the members will provide the content of or the investigation. So all the members I mentioned earlier, they can be a team or a fixed team member, while the staff involved in the event and the patients can be interviewed instead of being a member. Some institutes will have a patient representative. This member can be a fixed member of the RCA team and also can be interviewed. Okay, so after creating the team, the first thing they have to sit all together. At the first meeting, an orientation of RCA process should be provided, also a simulated RCA video as a part of just-in-time training. This to provide all the participants a common understanding of the RCA process. Also, a greeting by a top manager will highly be important to reinforce the importance of the team's work. At the first meeting, the RCA member, they should come up with the initial flow diagram. They have to decide on the meeting dates to prevent the delay. Also to reinforce the rules of each member. So now we'll move from getting started and assigning the RCA team to the initial sequence of events. So what do we mean? We mean by the initial flow diagram or the initial sequence of event is an outline of the story that processes chronologically from the first known fact through the final known fact. Make sure that you establish a series of events preceding the critical step. This will highly important. This is highly important to provide or to discover what actually caused the event and how we prevent it from happening again. Try to include only the critical facts, stick with only the known facts, and try to use tools and techniques as flip chart, brainstorming, and also only mention what you clearly know and what you don't know. So this is a template, an example. You have to mention what happened in each step, and then you will, by asking question, you will fill the gaps between each step. This is an example. If a patient was admitted in a hospital with a distended abdomen, and then the patient was shifted to X-ray, the patient fell off X-ray table, and then the patient gets injured to his newly replaced knee. So only state what you really know, and then after that, by asking a question, you will identify the information gap. As here, you can ask what was the handover communicated properly? Was the patient was screened for risk of fall, and was the radiologist staff assist the patient later on? So to craft the initial understanding, the RCA team should focus on the process, on the system, not on the individual. They have to ask what happened, why did it happen, and what action can we take to prevent its recurrency, and how we will know if action we took can make difference. Okay, so after that, they have to collect the resources to prepare for interview. They can gather the preliminary information from the incident report and from the patient documentation, preliminary investigation, and then they can decide during the first meeting on who's the member who will be interviewed, and also they have to decide the questions for the interview. This is one of the tools that can be used during the staff and patient interview. This is a triggering question. It consists of 75 questions. During the first meeting, the RCA team should decide from these 72 questions what is really relevant to the event being investigated. This 75 question consists of all the area that can be missed during the investigation, as the communication, training, fatigue and schedule, environment, rules, and barriers. Each question from the triggered question, it should be answered by yes, no, or not applicable. Okay, few tips before the interview. The interviews should be carried in person, one individual at a time. A maximum of 2 RCA members should conduct the interview. They should select a proper area to interview the staff and patients. Try not to blame or judge during the interview. At the beginning, assert the purpose of the interview is to have a system corrective action and to maintain a professionalism and avoid intimidation. During the interview, start with a general open-ended question and try to make the interview as safe as possible. During the interview, have practice an active listening. Try to keep an open, good posture and maintain a proper eye contact. Try to demonstrate an empathy to the patient and also to the staff. Try not to judge, blame, or interrupt. If the staff or the patient having difficulty to remember, try to draw a sketch of the process to trigger the memory. And also it is important to emphasize on confidentiality of the interview and the RCA process. Now, how can we engage the patient and his family? This is a really challenge to healthcare system. Based on the National Patient Safety Foundation, they released recently a report under the title of Partnering the Patient and Family for the Safest Care. They emphasize on the importance to involve the patient in every step of investigation, as this is difficult for healthcare system, as they only disclose the event, apologize to the patient. Now they have to consider the patient as an equal partner in the investigation and also in the recommendation and toward the improvement of safety, and also having the patient a member of to design the activity of safety activity. The evidence are lacking in supporting the involvement or the engagement of patients. We have a little articles talking about the patient engagement. This is one of the articles by Zimmerman. He concluded that involving the patient in the process of investigation of an RCA will allow the risk management professionalism to improve their organization system analysis by empowering the patient to be a part of the solution. And yet we are lacking how to involve or engage the patient. This is an area of improvement to us. So how this engagement will add on the RCA team recommendation. We know that the patient and the family are a witness of the investigation, so they will add a few answers to complete the understanding of the circumstances surrounding the event. They can be interviewed during the investigation, and also some facility have a patient representative who will act as a patient voice during the RCA team and also during the investigation. Before involving the patient as a member or interview the patient, make sure that your facility have a proper disclosure policy to gain the trust of the community, and also to make sure that the patients are aware before starting the RCA process. At the end, leadership and board members' support is highly important. They are the RCA recommendation should be approved by the CEO or the top management. They have to review the RCA result and the corrective action, and it's highly recommended to have an RCA and the corrective action result as a fixed agenda for the board members. This is also will maintain the sustainability of RCA process, and also to allow the leaders to follow the corrective action plan if it was really implemented during the assigned timeline. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Rawan. Let's see if there are some questions. I want to ask, there is a question saying, I want to ask who should lead the RCA whenever events happen in the hospital, example, medication error, and what do we mean by care delivery problems?
So it is the decision of the healthcare leader to assign the RCA team leader. He or she is the one to lead the RCA investigation. Regarding the second question.
What do we mean by care delivery problems?
Can you elaborate more?
It's not even clear for me. Arlene, if you can repost this question. Okay, let's see if there is another question. There is a question, simply please, when should we inform and when shouldn't inform the patient?
So based on your disclosure policy within your hospital, it should state what event should disclose to the patient, and also it depends on how your team and your facility are prepared to such disclosure and its consequences later on. But it is highly important to have a process of disclosure within your organization before you disclose it to the patient.
Excellent. So do we have a disclosure policy by SPSC?
Yes, we have a disclosure policy. It will be released in a few days.
Okay, excellent. There is the last question. The time frame for reporting medication error is 24 hours in most of policies. So how we can start RCA within this time? I think there is a confusion in this.
So you have to report of the event within 24 hours, then you have a total of 30 working days to complete your root cause analysis and to come up with the corrective action plan. So you should report within 24 hours, and then you complete and submit a completed root cause analysis within 30 working days.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Rawan, for this informative presentation. I think we can go for the next session by Dr. Tarfa. A reminder to you all to post your questions in the Q&A. We have some wonderful questions. If the time allows at the end, we might answer some of them. Dr. Tarfa, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Rakan. So we'll start with identifying the root causes analysis. The outlines are identifying root causes, identify the contributing factors, root causes analysis tools. So as my colleagues mentioned, that we have to prepare the team to conduct the RCA, and we have to start by asking the questions and trigger question. Now we'll move to identify the root cause analysis. So after RCA team has identified system vulnerabilities, these need to be documented and written up to comply with the 5 rules of causation. So we have to meet this rule. After that, the causes statement will be focused on correcting the system issues. So the causes statement are written to describe the cause, the effect, and the event, and we'll have examples to understand what does this mean. So the 5 rules of causation, the first rule is clearly show the cause and effect relationship. The second rule is use specific and accurate descriptors for what occurred rather than negative and vague words. Rule number 3, human errors must have a preceding cause. Rule number 4, violation of a procedure are not root causes, but must have a preceding cause. Rule number 5, failure to act is only causal when there is a pre-existing duty to act. We'll have example for each one, so it will be more easy to understand. First rule, clearly show the cause and effect relationship. The example for this rule is if you have a high volume of activity and noise in the emergency department, this is the cause. The resident is being distracted when entering medication orders. This is the effect, which increases the likelihood that the wrong dose would be ordered. This is the event. So it's incorrectly to write a resident during your process of gathering the information and documentation, a resident was fatigued. The correct statement would be residents are scheduled 80 hours per week, which led to increased level of fatigue, increasing the likelihood that dosing instructions would be misread. The second rule is use specific and accurate descriptors for what occurred rather than negative and vague words. In this rule, you have to avoid negative descriptors such as poor, inadequate, wrong, bad, failed, careless. relating to the previous example, so incorrectly to write, the manual is poorly written. The correct statement will be the pump user manual had 8-point font and no illustration. So the manual is having small font. As a result, nursing staff rarely used it, increasing the likelihood that the pump would be programmed incorrectly. The third rule is human error must have a preceding cause. So it's incorrectly to write the resident selected the wrong dose, which led to the patient being overdosed. The correct statement will be drugs in the computerized physician order entry system are presented to the user without sufficient space between the different doses on the screen, increasing the likelihood that the wrong dose could be selected, which led to the patient being overdosed. Rule number 4, violation of procedure are not root causes, but must have a preceding cause. We'll have example now. Incorrectly to write, the technician did not follow the procedure for CT scan, which led to the patient receiving an air bolus from an empty syringe, resulting in a fatal air embolism. The proper statement would be, or the correct statement would be, noise and confusion in the preparation area, coupled with the production pressure, increased the likelihood that steps in the CT scan protocol would be missed, resulting in injection of an air embolism and from using an empty syringe. Rule number 5 is failure to act is only causal when there is a pre-existing duty to act. So incorrectly to write, the nurse did not check for stat order every half an hour, which led to delay in the start of anticoagulation therapy, increasing the likelihood of blood clot. The correct statement would be the absence of assignment for designated registered nurse to check orders at specified time, increased the likelihood that the stat order would be missed or delayed, which led to delay in the therapy. Using the 5 rules of causation will help us to focus more on the process issue rather than the human factor. So now we will move to how to conduct the RCA and the tools that we will use. To conduct the RCA, we have to know the contributing factor, and to know the contributing factor, we have to know the categories of the contributing factor. The first category is the process issue. The second category is human factor. The third category is equipment and technology. The fourth category, environmental factors. The fifth category is the staff competency and performance. The sixth category is manpower planning issues. The seventh category is leadership and safety culture. The eighth category is communication and information. And if anything is not relating to these categories, we can put it in others. We will talk about the tools that we have in SPSC manual, and we will go through another tools after we complete this talk about the tool. So in this tool, we have the category of contributing factor. As you see, the process issue. We have questions for the process issue. For example, what was the intended process flow? Here, the role of the team during the RCA process to write every details regarding to answer this question. The second question is, were there any steps in the process that did not occur as intended? So also we have to check if there is any, if it's yes or no. What were the steps in the process that did not occur as intended? Write your details. And the next column, you have contributing factor. So these are the factors that affected the process issue and affected the category, this category. After you finish checking and selecting the proper contributing factor, you have to write the causal statement as we learned previously. The corrective action, then the corrective action, the action strength, we will talk it later in the next question and the next lecture. So regarding the human factor, we mean by human factor is the staff and everything related to the staff. So as you see in the second row, the human factor, the second column, the triggering question, you will have a more clear how to answer this question. what were staff-related human performance factors relevant to the outcomes. So here we focused on the staff and what the affected what affect the staff and made the staff did this event. And we'll go, this is the trigger question. Now we'll check the contributing factor. Is it the stress? Is it the lack of motivation? Is it the domestic problem? This is for a human factor. Now we'll move to the equipment and technology. An example for equipment and technology is, was available equipment technology used as intended? So here you have to check yes or no and complete answering the question. This is for the triggering question, but you have to know also to check the contributing factor, such as if it's a poor working order, it's an appropriate size, is it unreliable? So check all that applied to your event, and write the causal statement stating clearly what happened regarding this factor. Now we'll move to the environmental factor. We'll take an example. How was the physical work environment designed to decrease the stress level? So here you have to write what it's applied to your, what was applied to your event, and to check the contributing factor. Was there any lack of secure site space? Temperature too high or low? Was there any noise? After that, you have to write your causal statement. Now we'll move to the staff competency and performance. We'll take an example. The question is, the trigger question is, how were the results of training monitored over time? So you have to check your answer and choose the appropriate contributing factor. Regarding the manpower planning issues, we'll take an example. Was there sufficient staff on hand for workload at the time? And you have to answer the question with yes or no. The example was a workload high or is it low? So after that, you have to check the contributing factor. Is there any overload, an appropriate skill, low staff to patient ratio? So regarding the leadership and safety culture, as my colleague Dr. Rawan mentioned, that they have an important role in supporting the process, and they have also an important role in the event. So if there is any support from the leadership, and if there is any culture support risk reduction, so you have to answer these questions. Then to check the contributing factor, is there any inadequate decision action caused by the group influence? Is there any hierarchical structure or governance structure not conducive to discussion or problem sharing? So check all that applied contributing factor. Then write your causal statement. So regarding the communication and information, you'll check if there is a good communication between the patients, if there was a patient correctly identified, if the assessment shared between the team and the caring team and the transferring team. Then check the contributing factor that applied. If there is an appropriate tone, voice, if there is any incorrect use of the language. After that, you have to write the causal statement. If there is any event that is not, if there any question or any inquiry that it's not filling in the category of contributing factor, you can write it down in the others and answer the inquiry. We finished discussing the SPSC tool. Now we'll go through another tools that might help you during your RCA process. So this is this tool is the final flow diagram. In the previous lecture, you saw the initial flow diagram. The initial flow diagram will continue from the beginning of the RCA process till you get the final flow diagram. The knowledge gaps are filled, and every point and this timeline is addressed and investigated to find the root causes. This is another tool, the cause and effect diagram. This tool is to investigate. It is an investigative tool as well as a means to improve communication to the stakeholders. It's used to identify and document the contributing factors and to look for the causes that can be corrected. And as the other tools, it's used not mandatory. So use the tools that's appropriate to you, and it's easy for you to use to answer all your inquiries. This is the cause and effect diagram. Look, and this is after filling the tool. Another tool is the 5 whys. You will write your problem statement in the beginning, and you will keep asking why until you reach a point that you don't have any further questions. So you know that you answered your all inquiry. The other tool is the sequence of event. This tool, you can use it, and also in your RCA process, you can look back to medical record and staff interview to fill these tools. We went through multiple tools. Use the tool that's appropriate to you. Use the tools that have more details so that you won't forget any question, or you won't forget to answer your inquiries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Tarfa. I think one of the most important tools that you saw is the tool in the manual. It contains mostly all of the information that you need to ask during your RCA process or investigation. We came across the human factors that somebody asked at the beginning of the lecture, which is what are the characteristics and what do we mean by human factors? So all the things that are related to humans and staff, what they feel, what is their environment, physical activity. You can see some examples in the third column from the left. Stress is a factor, lack of motivation, domestic problems, lifestyle problems, cultural beliefs, low self-confidence, risk averse, preoccupation, narrowed focus, perception or viewpoint affected by information or mindset, distraction or attention deficit, failure to follow established policies or procedures. These are all examples of human factors that can contribute to patient safety events. I hope the tools can help you or aid in your RCA process. As Dr. Tarfa said, you can adapt whichever you feel comfortable with, or if your hospital has a pre-designed tool, you can use it. We'll come to some questions in the Q&A section. Is it necessary we should have multiple meetings, or one meeting is enough? I don't think that in a single meeting you can decide on what are the root causes and you come up with corrective action plans. You need to gather information before the first meeting, draft your initial flow diagram, meet with the team, the RCA team, draft your questions, use the triggering questions, decide on whom to interview and whom not to interview, with subsequent meetings as needed for deciding the true root causes, investigating the root causes more and more, and coming up with a corrective action plan. The other question is, how do we reconcile patient confidentiality with family engagement? So the basic rule is, if the patient is does have the capacity, he's an adult patient, it should not be discussed with any other member than the patient. Are quality improvement RCA tools like Fishbone or Process Map needful in this topic? Of course, it will be helpful in the investigation, and they can gather all the information for you to come up with the true root causes. The aim of all of these tools is to reach the true root causes. You can use the Fishbone, you can to highlight the process, you can use the process map, you can use the 5 whys if you come with root causes that you think are not the root causes, to come up with the correct answers. So what is the time frame for the immediate corrective action plan? It depends. You should draft your action plan within 45 days, but how long does it take to work on them? It depends on the type of the corrective action and how long will it take, and we'll come to that later in the lecture. What about if patient not following the instruction, like he is falling down because he cannot call the nurse and stand alone and not press the bell? So what we'll do in this case? So based on the investigation, is there anything to improve in your process and the environment beside the patient? I know that one hospital provided a press button to the patients to call the nurses. He was given instructions upon admission to highlight the importance of not falling down. They have a designed pre-assessment or fall risk. All of these will help you in managing these patients. You have to come up with your own action plan based on your true root causes. Next question is, in our root cause analysis report format, there is a portion which we need to identify care delivery problems and contributory factors. Also, is there a standard format for RCA? There is no standardized format for the RCA process, but it is a well-known process for gathering information, meeting with team members, interviewing patients and healthcare providers. These are the general outlines of the RCA process itself. WHO, or who constitutes your RCA team? As Dr. Rawan have mentioned, we can come back to the slide that Dr. Rawan have came across to see who are the team members. Just for a second. So you have the subject matter expert on the event or close call process being evaluated. For example, a consultant in the emergency department where a patient fall have happened. Individuals not familiar with the event or close call. For example, the nurses working in the emergency department. They can be part of the RCA team. Leader who's well versed in the RCA process. This is, I think, clear. Staff directly involved in the event. This one should be interviewed only, not part of the team. Frontline staff working in the area or process, as we said before, a nurse there. The patient involved in the event should be interviewed only, not part of the team. Patient representative can be part of the team and can be interviewed also. Okay. Let's go back to our slide. Okay. So next question, can I have the name of the first tool, please? Which tool you mean? If it is in the manual, you can find it in our website. Do you recommend an RCA to the event that is frequently occurs, even not sentinel event? Of course. These events, based on the prioritization, needs the highest and the urgent response because they are frequently happening. How do we deal with the fear of disclosing to family when they can still call 937? Each hospital has to have their own disclosure policy. The SPSC policy, disclosure policy, will help you form your own policy to disclose who should disclose and how to disclose. This should be implemented in the hospital itself. 937, I think you will get complaints whatever the result of the disclosure. Thank you for the excellent presentation. You are welcome. Stick with us to the next presentation. What kind of incident that requires to conduct RCA? So as we said before, you have to have a predefined list of what constitutes or have to have an RCA investigation. Some hospitals have a mandatory RCA investigation, and this is by MOH in the Saudi Arabia. Patient safety events, close calls. Some people, they do not do RCA investigations, and some people they do. I think we can break out for 30 minutes before going to the third lecture and doing the case studies. So we will meet back again at 11:50. Thank you. Hello all. So we will start in a couple of minutes, 2 minutes. I would like to answer some of the questions about this educational activity. Some people are asking about the CMEs. So this is an educational activity under the umbrella of WHO and does not contain any CME hours. I would like to thank you all for your participation and your questions. So the materials, unfortunately, we cannot provide them to you, but we will hold on more future courses about this workshop. Make sure to attend. to Ms. Fawzia, I already mentioned that the materials, unfortunately, we cannot provide them. And future courses will be held, inshallah. Make sure to attend. Okay, I think it's time to start. Okay, so I will be presenting the action plans, developing the action plans, and afterwards we will have the case study. So developing actions or action plans, I think it is the most important step in the RCA square process, which is the identification and implementation of actions to eliminate or control system hazards or vulnerabilities that have been identified in the contributing factor statements that we mentioned earlier. Therefore, review teams should strive to identify actions that prevent the event from recurring. Or if that is not possible, reduce the severity or consequences if it should recur. So the first tool, and I think this is the most important tool that we have, is the action hierarchy. It is developed by the US Department of Veterans Affairs, National Center for Patient Safety. It has been used for decades in many other industries to improve worker safety. It will assist the teams in identifying stronger actions that provide effective and sustained system improvement. Using this tool or other action tools in identifying stronger actions that provide effective and sustained system improvement. The action hierarchy tool categorizes the actions into three categories: strong, intermediate, and weak. They are based on the human reliance. So the stronger the action is, the less human reliance is. Let's take some examples. In here, as you can see, we have, for example, architectural or physical plant changes. For example, if you have at your hospital a revolving door at the main entrance and it is causing patient falls or patient injuries, a strong action for these events is to replace the door, the whole door, with a sliding or swinging door. Let's take another example of a strong action, which is simplifying the process. This is a thing that is simply done. You highlight the process that you have. You remove any unnecessary steps on this process. This is considered as a strong action. An intermediate action, it has more intermediate reliance on humans, but it is an effective action. Let's take examples: checklists and cognitive aids. It has some downside that some people are just checking the checklist. They are not reading the whole checklist for the purpose of paperwork only. But the positive part is that it showed by evidence its effectiveness in adhering to the steps and adhering to the policies and procedures. So using these checklists or cognitive aids is considered as intermediate action. Let's take another example: standardizing communication tools. For example, the read back, check back, SBAR, the iPass, the baton for handovers. All are considered intermediate action. Take in mind that these, for example, these communication tools, they should be documented that it has been used in the communication process. For example, if a nurse is handing over a patient to another nurse, they can write down the tool iPass the baton with all of its characteristics in the patient file. Coming to the weaker actions, they have more reliance on humans, and that's why they are considered weaker actions. Humans tend to forget to be replaced, a new staff will come, he will make the same error again. So they are considered weaker actions. For example, the double checks. One person can calculate the dose and another person reviews the calculation. Warnings, training, all of these are considered as weaker actions. For the RCA investigation, they should identify at least one stronger or intermediate strength action for each RCA review. In some cases, it may be necessary to recommend actions classified as weaker actions in the action hierarchy for temporary measures until stronger actions or intermediate actions can be implemented. Weaker actions such as training and policy changes, for example, they are usually or sometimes necessary to establish proficiency and expectations. But they should not be used alone to review or implement corrective actions for a certain RCA process. Human errors. While it might be true that a human error was involved in an adverse event, and it is easy to point fingers, the very occurrence of a human error implies that it can happen again. You change the individual, the error will happen again. If one well-oriented or well-intentioned and well-trained provider working in his or her typical environment makes an error, there are surely system factors that facilitated this error. What is our goal from developing this action is to increase safety in the long term and not allow similar events to occur. When the involved provider is disciplined, counseled, or retrained, we might reduce the likelihood that this particular individual will not commit this error or this event again, but will not protect or prevent other people from falling into the same system error. Solutions that address human error directly, such as remediation, training, implementation of policies, all are considered weaker actions. So after we implement the actions as the above stated action hierarchy and examples, how do we measure its effectiveness or measure that we implemented this action? First of all, to ensure that actions are implemented, we have to assign an individual for each action. It's not a committee. The responsibility of each action should be for an individual. We should also set a date by which the action must be completed. And this individual must have the authority to affect change and should have the resources or access to the resources to implement the action. Why shouldn't we assign a committee for action implementation? You can answer in the chat. Why we shouldn't assign a committee for an action, for action implementation? So I will repeat the question again. Why we should not assign a committee for action implementation? Why is it just an individual for each action? Yes, so I have a wonderful, a couple of wonderful answers. So Fatima says the responsibility will be delegated and lost between members. Correct, exactly. This is the answer. Accountability, privacy, bureaucratic delays will get complex, maybe due to conflicts. So conflicts are not usually the concern. Usually the concern is that the responsibility will be diluted between the members of the committee. And it will undermine the probability of successful implementation. This is the main reason why we should assign it to an individual, not a committee. So each action identified by the review team requires at least one measure. So each action should have at least one measure. It can have multiple, but it should not have less than one measure. We have two types of, or before that, the measure should identify what is being measured, by whom, what compliance is expected, and the specific date that the measure will be assessed. We have two types of measurements, which are the process measure and the outcome measure. Can somebody type in the chat the difference between the process and outcome measures? Okay, so we have an answer from Lujane. When you check how you are doing, excellent. Something ongoing, critical results reporting, process. The outcome is the end result. Exactly, the outcome is the end result, but what is the difference between process and outcome measures? So to put this simply, process measure confirms that the action has been implemented. A process measure may be something as simple as documenting that the action was implemented. On the other hand, outcome measure will assess if the action is effective. We'll come to some examples in the next slides. So the length of time required to implement the measure should also be considered when you choose the measure that you want. So let's take this example. Staff use of, if an action required beta testing of new technology to improve staff use of alcohol-based hand gel before and after each patient encounter. Can you give me an example of process measure and outcome measure for this action? You can answer it in the chat. Yeah, wonderful answers. Outcome measure is achieving its goal. So I will repeat the question. This is an example. If an action required beta testing of new technology to improve staff use of alcohol hand gel before and after each patient encounter, what is a process measure for this action, and what is the outcome measure? So compliance rate of using gel is process. Nice. Number of contact infection caused by healthcare. This is outcome. Nice. Excellent. Excellent. Correct answers. So the a potential process measure for this example is observing 100 staff encounters over a 7-day period with an expected compliance rate of 95%. Let's go back to our slide before. So how did we form this measure? We identified what is being measured, by whom, what compliance level is expected, and what is the expected date that the measure will be assessed. Let's take outcome measure. A potential outcome measure for this example is 20% reduction in hospital-acquired infections transmitted by staff-patient contact. This is an outcome measure. We have a target and we have a goal clearly defined. So another difference between process and outcome measure is the data for the process measure. In the process measure, it might be collected more quickly than the outcome measures. Let's take this for an example, the alcohol-based hand gel. Calculating or measuring the infection rate will take a longer time than measuring 100 staff patient encounters over 7 days. So I will get the the results of the measure more quickly. So what measure should we use first? Deciding what type of measure to employ. This is a risk-based decision. You should balance between the precision and accuracy of the measurement and what conclusions it will permit as opposed to the downside if the effectiveness is inaccurately determined. When actions have been measured, the CEO, review team, patient, or patient family, they should be provided with feedback on its effectiveness. Let's go to the feedback. So it is essential that all the involved staff, as well as patients and or family, be provided feedback of the findings of the whole RCA process and the actions that are implemented. They should also provide comments on whether the proposed actions make sense to them or not. Afterwards, feedback to the whole organization. This is considered as a learning experience for the whole organization, and all staff should learn about this RCA investigation and the actions that have been taken. And also permitting the staff to see the improvements of these results will enhance the staff satisfaction and see the value of their reports when they report incidents to the quality and patient safety. For the RCA process to be successful, it is critical that it should be supported by all levels of leadership in the organization, from the chief executive officer and board directors and CEO and CMOs. Each action recommended by the review team should be approved or disapproved by the leaders or board members. Preferably by the CEO, but another appointed member by the leadership by the CEO can satisfy this rule. And if an action is disapproved, there should be a reason for its disapproval, and it should be documented and explained to the RCA team, so they can comprehend why it's not approved, and they can take other actions or come up with other actions that can help in the RCA. RCA results on significant events should be presented to the board directors for their review and comment. It is recommended that the review of RCA reports be added to the board of directors meeting agenda. So the boards should have a meeting, when they have meeting agendas, it is the responsibility of quality and patient safety to introduce the RCA process or the RCA meetings with the meeting agenda of the boards. It will provide them with an overall look on the quality of work in the enterprise. Action hierarchy and warning signs of an effective RCA that were explained before will aid the CEO and board members in making qualitative assessment to determine whether the RCA that is being done in the quality and patient safety department is of high quality, has been completed or not, and there should be modifications to it or not. Leaders then need to determine the applicability of the findings on a broader scale across their organization or beyond even their organization to take these actions. This is the schedule that was presented by Dr. Badr about the characteristics of ineffective RCA. There are no contributing, for example, let's take the first three. There are no contributing factors identified, or the contributing factors lack supporting data or information. One or more individuals are identified as causing the event. They are not identifying systems. Causal factors point to human error or blame. These are indicative of ineffective RCA. And this is one of the important steps, is that no stronger or intermediate actions are identified during the RCA processes. Part of the measurement of effective RCAs is that the leadership should have an annual review of the RCA processes that are, or investigations that are being done in their organizations. These examples can help the leaders and board members to assess the effectiveness of their RCA process. Percent of contributing factors written to meet the 5 rules of causation, which is presented by Dr. Tarfa. Percent of RCA reviews with at least one stronger or intermediate action. You know, this is the opposite of the previous slide, which is the characteristics of an effective RCA. It has some additional points. For example, the percent of actions completed, percent of actions that are implemented on time. These gives an indication of quality of RCA process that is being done at their organization. As a conclusion to the theoretical part of our workshop, the key for successful RCA process or program is leadership support. The components of successful program include establishing a transparent risk-based methodology for triaging events, selecting the correct personnel to serve on the team, providing the team with the resources and time to complete the review, identifying at least one stronger or intermediate strength action in each review, and measuring the actions to assess if they were effective in mitigating the risk and if they were even implemented. Using the tools that are previously mentioned can help the board members and leadership and even the team members to monitor their RCA program. Recommendations, leadership support. So this is the if you want to go out from this workshop with a single message, is that leadership support is the most important thing in the RCA process. This should be accomplished by supporting the process, approving and periodically reviewing the status of actions, understanding what a thorough RCA report should include, and acting when reviews do not meet minimum requirements. Also, leadership need to review the RCA process at least annually. Some organizations, they do it biannually for effectiveness. Blameworthy events that are not appropriate for RCA review should be defined. Facilities should use transparent, formal, and explicit risk-based prioritization system to identify adverse events, close cause, and system vulnerabilities requiring RCA review. As Dr. Badr mentioned in the risk prioritization system tool that he presented in the first lecture. At the end, RCA process or RCA reporting should start within 72 hours. It is fresh in the minds of the staff, fresh in the minds of the patient and family, so they do not forget. That's it for me. I'm happy to receive any questions before moving on to the case study. What is the time frame for the immediate corrective action? So there is no time frame for immediate corrective action. For the corrective actions to take place, it depends on its applicability. For example, if I have, if I want, one of the actions is to implement an electronic medical record for the patients to improve communication, to improve follow-up of the patient. This will take time. It will take years. Another thing, for example, the example that you mentioned above, if I want to replace a door at the entrance of the hospital, this will take at least, at maximum, it will take 2 months or 3 months. So it depends on the action that you take. There is no specific time frame for the immediate corrective action. For formulating the corrective action in the RCA to report it to, for example, Sipahi or Saudi Patient Safety Center, this should be done within 30 to 45 days, depending on the organization and its policy. I hope I answered the question clearly. Any other questions? You can write them down in the Q&A section. What about second victim program? So this is outside of the scope of this workshop, but each hospital and or facility should have a clear policy, a clear guidelines on how to deal with second victims. We know by evidence that second victims are there. They are affected by adverse events. There are evidence-based solutions and supporting there is supporting evidence on how to deal with them. It should be implemented in the hospital itself. Saudi Patient Safety Center is providing some is planning to develop a second victim program and guidelines to or manual to help the organizations formulate their own second victim program. Yes, of course, the second victim can improve safety culture and reporting of incidents. That's correct. Okay, if there are no further questions, we can move on to the case study. So Dr. Mohammed Al-Wadi had an emergent situation. Me and Dr. Badr Ashtadi will be discussing this case study together. We would and we encourage your participation in the chat with answering the questions that we will ask during this case study. Dr. Badr, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so can we start then?
Yeah. So as Rakan told you, we'll start with the case study now. So it's just an exercise. We want to implement whatever we learned today together regarding the RCA. So we'll start with the case. I'll read the case. Then we'll discuss the root cause analysis. What should we do next together? So a 65-year-old male, he's 124 kg. He's known to have aortic stenosis with coronary artery disease, and he underwent a combined aortic valve repair and coronary artery bypass grafting. Post-op, they did a chest X-ray which showed a small metallic object that was reported to be mostly a retained foreign object. So the treating physician reported this incident through the reporting system in your hospital.
Okay, so what do you think we should do next? You can answer in the chat. So we have a wonderful answer. They are saying leadership notification. Excellent. So leadership notification, one of the first actions that can be taken after the report is submitted to the Quality and Patient Safety Department to appoint. What is the purpose of notifying the leadership? Is to appoint a team leader and team members of the hospital.
I just want to add, I just read Fatma Al-Ansari, as we said before, make sure the patient condition is stable. So this would be the first step. If we are asking what is the first step in this patient, would be to make sure that he's stable, whatever complication or adverse event happened after this retain foreign object, we should, and this foreign object didn't cause the patient to be unstable. For example, if he's unstable, we should intervene. And as my colleague Dr. Rakan discussed, leadership notification to get the support and the RCA team is very important.
Okay, so as we said, yeah, you can go, Dr. Badr.
So again, we'll keep repeating this because it's very important. We said that now we made sure that the patient is stable. He's not in need for any medical or surgical intervention right now. Getting started. So again, we need to ask ourselves what happened. Why did it happen? What action can be taken to prevent it from happening again? How we will know if the action that we want to take, it would make a difference. So as my colleague in the previous presentations talked, the point RCA team should be the first step. And we'll go through the analysis and taking action. So the whole idea with the analysis is to identify the root cause, to try to find if there are multiple root causes, and to collect the information, looking back and try to collect the information gaps and draft down the initial sequence of event. And after that, we'll go to taking the action, whether it's corrective action plan, developing action plan, and write the timeline and deliverables. I don't know, Dr. Rakan, if you want to add something.
Okay, so after the identification of incident and notifying the leadership will appoint the team members and team leader. There is no unified way of conducting this, but RCA team members need to have just-in-time training. Just a simple training, 1 or 2 hours about the RCA, insisting on the blame-free investigation type of event, and separating it from accountability investigations or investigations done by the HR. Then we'll have to gather all the information that we need, initial information to draft our initial sequence of events. After that, the first meeting happens. They will discuss the initial timeline, the sequence of events, the process itself. They will draft it on the initial flow diagram. They will identify the information gaps that they need. Every step should be described clearly as stated, not as the opinion of the team member. Afterwards, you have to formulate the questions that need to be used in the interview. For example, you can use the triage questions, or if you have some certain questions, you can add them. Appoint each team member to interview appoint 1 or 2 team members, as Dr. Rawan said, to interview each staff or patient. Then the interview should happen. So let's go next to the next slide. So the process itself, as we said, internal reporting of the event review and matching with sentinel event definitions at your institution, MOH or Saudi Patient Safety Center. This is defined as sentinel event. Yes, no, will follow the healthcare facility policy. Yes, it should be reported to the sentinel event portal of MOH Sibahi or the Saudi Patient Safety Center. So, Dr. Badr.
Thank you, Dr. Rakan. Just one thing I forgot to mention when we said what to do next after stabilization of the patient and assign the RCA team, etc. One important step is to disclose the event to the patient, to the family, and you must follow your disclosure policy. So if you don't have some hospitals, we did multiple symposium this year from the Saudi Patient Safety Center, and we have visited multiple area inside the Saudi, inside the kingdom, there are some hospitals that they have clear disclosure policy and some they don't have it. So you should follow your disclosure policy of the hospital. If you don't have a disclosure policy, you should engage your leadership how you are going to disclose this to the patient or to the family. So if we go back to the Sentinel event manual and try to chart this Sentinel event to the reportable Sentinel event list, which were 27. This event is number 8, unattended retention of foreign object in a patient after a surgical or invasive procedure. Again, as I described earlier in the first lecture, each event has a clear event description, inclusion and exclusion criteria. So one of the important things in the exclusion criteria, if you can see here, any object left for medical reason in a patient. For example, sometimes there are sutures which were left for a medical reason, or sometimes it's a stent or cardiac device, implement, etc. Those are not an intended retention of foreign object. It should match the event description and inclusion.
Okay, so do you think this case satisfies the definition or inclusion criteria of a Sentinel event or not? You can answer in the chat. Excellent. So we are on the same page. So this this event is qualified to be a Sentinel event.
So this event, sorry, I can't interrupt. This event, it's characterized as a never happen event. It should never happen. And if you go back to the description, Dr. Rakan, you can clearly see there that this is considered a Sentinel event, whether death, permanent harm, or severe or temporary harm occurred or not. So it's not about the harm. Whenever there is an unattended retained foreign object, it's a Sentinel event.
Excellent. So we've identified that this is a Sentinel event. As we said, we'll assign the RCA team, notify the healthcare facility governing sector within the specified time frame, disclosure of the event to the patient and family. These steps should occur simultaneously. I know that some of you said before assigning we should disclose it to the patient and family, but there is no unified way of or known step of which comes first, the assignment of team or the disclosure. Okay, so afterwards we have to conduct the RCA and corrective action plans. We'll come up within 30 days of the corrective action plan in the report of the RCA. So we said the team formation, membership, and roles. So who do you think the team should consist of? You can write them down in the chat. The team.
So imagine that this case happened in your facility. Who would be your team formation? If you were assigned by the CEO to select the team, please select a team. So the question was regarding this case, retained foreign object in a patient who's having mitral valve replacement, aortic valve replacement. Now you were assigned by the leadership or the CEO of the hospital to formulate your team. Let's choose our team.
So I see some answers in the chat. Cardiac surgeon, anesthesia head of OR and surgery. So let's take cardiac surgeon. The surgeon himself or somebody or his colleagues. Okay, so there is an answer: expert cardiac surgeon. So the team, the staff involved in the incident, he should be a team member or should be interviewed?
Excellent. I can see most of the people,
Yeah.
they are agreeing
So-
that he is team member.
Yeah,
He's not a team member, but he should be interviewed.
he should be interviewed. And another experienced surgeon should be one of the team members. If we go back to the schedule, you can see that the surgeon is considered the subject matter expert. I mean, the colleague of the involved physician. Who else should be in the teams? So I see an answer: nurses, patient safety officer, leader. So if you remember Dr. Rawan's lecture about the team members. So nursing head OR, she's a subject matter expert and a frontline staff. Excellent. She should be part of the team members. Who else? So part of the quality team. What characteristics should the quality team should have? Okay, so quality and patient safety as facilitators. What should the facilitator have in mind or have as qualifications? So knowledge in the RCA process, yes, that's excellent. He should be fully oriented and knowledgeable about the RCA process itself. And we have the leader. I think we finished with the team members. Who do you think we should interview? So doctor involved, we said he should be interviewed. Surgical team should be interviewed, okay. Circulating nurses, OR nurses involved. So experts can be also interviewed to see if the practice of the physician is following the policy and procedures and the up-to-date guidelines or not. There is an important member in the RCA should be interviewed. Who is it?
What do you think about patient and family?
Excellent.
What do you think? Give us your opinion about patient and family. Should we interview every patient and family for each event or not?
So somebody answered, they said, not next stage, not direct. I think you can interview them with interviewing the staff. There is no harm in that, but you should be knowledgeable about what was the actual event and what happened, because you already disclosed this with the patient before conducting the RCA process. So the patient involvement and or family. Also, you might choose the patient representative as a substitute for the patient. You can use them as to interview them about what happened and getting the information exactly about the event. So moving on, after we formed our team, what should we do next? Is holding the first meeting. So what did we say about holding the first meeting? So we collected the data already by gathering the initial information.
What should we do after gathering the data in the first RCA meeting?
So check the process. Do you mean mapping the process? Excellent. So analysis of data, is that meaning that we should map the process in a specific way? What should we use to map the process?
Maybe a tool. What tool you can use?
So
chart, okay.
flow chart, the initial flow diagram.
Okay.
Excellent. So the initial flow diagram will map the process exactly as it is supposed to happen, and will give us the details of what should happen and where are the gaps in knowledge. So after identifying the initial flow diagram, we should identify the gaps in our process. What happened and we did not know about in each step of the event. So what should we write in the first, middle, and last boxes in this chart? Where should we stop in the initial flow diagram? The last process, the last circle. Where should we stop? What should we write in that? So somebody's typing action. I don't think this is the place to write the action in here. Yes, the outcome. So this is the last circle constitutes the outcome of the patient, or the of what happened in the report. So and here you can see that there is a beginning, a step, then the end. We should identify each information gap in each step or process. After the is my voice clear? Okay, excellent. So in each step, we should identify information gaps. After identifying the information gap, we should formulate the questions to fill this gap, and afterwards we should add the missing information to the initial flow diagram. So this initial flow diagram will be with us each meeting and will be filled each meeting until we come up with the final flow diagram. So in this diagram, we should state what happened and what should have happened in this report. So here is the flow after filling the gap. You can go, Dr. Badr.
So what we discussed, the case, it was a real case, and this was the real flow chart. They have it, or the checklist, they have it for whatever surgery they do. So the first thing here is to look about the process. Is there any missing steps in the process or not? So if we start from the surgical count before the surgery, prior to the surgery, swabs and other items should be counted by 2 registered nurses. Then whatever additional swabs, needles, instrument added to the field, it should be also counted. Then to count all the used and unused swab. And then the final count, this is the fourth time, performed before the closure of the skin and confirmed after skin closure. So if there is any discrepancy noted in these checklist, I would say the hospital checklist, if there is discrepancy, if there is no discrepancy, you go and do the skin closure and everything is okay. But if there is a discrepancy, what should have been done is to ask for an X-ray. And then if you can identify the foreign body by the X-ray, it needs to be removed by a surgeon, or if he cannot remove it, he will call another surgeon and they will get extra steps. The idea behind this picture or this graph is whenever you are going back to the process, if you find that all of the process have been accomplished, there were like four time they count the swabs, every steps they're accomplishing and they are doing. So how would you think about it? If you go back as a patient safety expert or subject matter expert, and you did the investigation and you find that all of the steps has been followed, still there is a retained foreign object. What do you think? Where is the mistake, or where is the gap?
Somebody's answering going for familiarity.
Okay, this could be a reason, but maybe my question was not clear. I mean, imagine you are in the OR and you follow these steps one by one, and still there is a mistake. What does that mean? So to know the importance of double checking the count process wrong. Thank you. Thank you, Fawzia. This is what I mean. So this means there is a process, the process is wrong. We need to identify or add or modify extra step. If the team are following the steps one by one and still we get a retained foreign object, that means we need to review our process. If we find the gap, where is the problem, for example, in the third count, means that the process is okay, but we need to look back why the third count didn't happen. So this is very important. Whenever you follow up, or you follow the mistake, or you follow the case, you need to identify if there is a process gap from the beginning.
Okay, so this slide shows you how to outline the exact process that you have in your hospital to come up with the missing information that you have in your process. In these steps, if you find something that is missing, you highlight it, you formulate your questions, you go investigate, and then you fill the gaps. So why did it happen? This is part of the questions that you need to ask. You can use the 5 rules of causation to evaluate your the causes that you came up with. As Dr. Talfa have mentioned before, you can use these rules to clearly make the statements that you will be recording on your flow diagram to reach to the true root causes. It should be in a positive, it should be documented in a positive words, not negative words. For example, for example, in this scenario, the consultant or the surgeon is a junior surgeon, or he does not know the policy. This is not the way to write it down based on the 5 rules of causation. So you need to write it down in a more formal and a positive wording. After you find out your root causes, what you should identify. So you have the root causes. You reach them using the 5 rules of causation. What you should add to that in the flow diagram. If you remember the tool that is designed by the Saudi Patient Safety Center, no, before the action plan, designed by the Saudi Patient Safety Center, you have the root causes. Next to it is something else. So 5 whys is a way or a tool to reach to the root causes. So now you reached your root causes. So before reviewing past events to this specific event, what do you think?
For example, let's say one of the root causes is shortage of staff. You don't have enough staff to cover the OR, so there were no 2 nurses to check the process or the checklist. So you have identified the root cause. What do you want to do after identifying the root causes and before writing your action plan? For example, the root cause is shortage of nurses. What do you want to know about shortage of staff? Why
we have shortage of staff. So this will lead us to reasons of shortage of staff, right?
Excellent.
Yes, contributory factors. So Ms. Alia have mentioned in the comments that contributory factors, we should identify it. Excellent. So we should identify the contributory factors to each root cause. In the tool, there are multiple contributory factors that we can go through. Why do we have a shortage of staff? For example, somebody is sick, somebody is on leave, no enough staffing by the HR. These are all contributory factors which we should document after each root cause. There is failure of communication. Why do we have a communication failure? For example, we don't have a standardized communication tools, equipment or technology. There is a contributory factor. There is failure of equipment and technology as a root cause. Why do we have failure of equipment? For example, the biomeds are not checking it regularly.
And I want to add one thing, if you allow me, Dr. Rakan.
Yes.
As Dr. Rakan mentioned, it's very important to standardize and unifying the process. So if you think about this case, if I ask you now, what do you think are the contributing factor? If you don't go systematic and use a methodology, clear methodology, you might miss important points in the case. So if you go to the website, or if you are in Saudi and you are using the Saudi Patient Safety Center portal, each one of them, as Dr. Tarfa and Dr. Rakam talk about in the previous lecture, each one of them, there are triggering questions in the website. So whenever you put human factor or process issue, etc., there are trigger questions that will help you to proceed with the case. This way, you will make sure that you have covered most of the, or almost all the possible contributing factor, and you are unifying and standardizing the process. If you look to these contributing factor, process issue, human factor, equipment, technology, environmental factor, staff competency, manpower planning, leadership and safety culture, communication and information, mostly it covers all of the possible contributing factor. Go through the website. Even if someone who has zero experience in RCA, if he follows the steps, he will be able to identify the safety gaps.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Badr. Okay, so at the end of the investigation, you should come up with your final flow diagram with the identified gaps in information and gaps in the process, the questions that you asked during your interview, the root causes as a result from your interview, based on written based on the 5 rules of causation. You can check if this is a true root cause or not by using the 5 whys. Then you should you can use the cause and effect diagram to see how this process or how this event led to this outcome. Then at the end, you will have a clear image of the sequence of events that happened to your patient. So next we have, how do we prevent this from happening again? You can answer in the chat. I see some people answering in the Q&A. You can answer in the chat. It is easier for us to read. So corrective action plan. Yes, excellent. So now we come to our corrective action plan. What characteristics should the plan have? What tools can we use in formulating our actions?
I see a great comments, but we are talking in general, not about only this case. whatever case you have, what are the tools that you will use to build and plan your corrective action plan?
Recheck the process. Okay, before that, you're giving us answers about the case itself. I know it is a little bit confusing, but what can you use to formulate this action? Why did you say recheck the process? Okay, excellent. So Nahla says action hierarchy. Yes, so action hierarchy is one of the tools that can be used to assess our actions that we came up with. For example, in here, in this case, we have 4 times checking of the missing equipments or devices in the operating room. So what do you think this is? If I correct this action by adding a 5th step, which is the surgeon himself checks the count, surgical count. What do you think this action will be?
Is it strong, intermediate, weak?
So it has a lot of reliance on human, right? And he will say that 4 times it has been checked. I will not check. So this might be considered as a weak action. It has more reliance on humans. That's why double checking is considered as a weak action. How to solve this? Coming up with intermediate and stronger action based on the action hierarchy. Punama has commented on communication. So excellent. Standardizing the communication, for example, in the OR itself. For example, the nurse that is responsible for the surgical count communicates this to the. We should put a policy that she should communicate this to the surgeon. If he did not respond, she should escalate to the head of OR. If not responding, she should escalate to the CEO or the managers of the hospital and to take actions. This is considered as a strong action because I know it has reliance on human, but this will standardize the process that if there is a miscount, this process will happen with the treating surgeon. I hope it's clear. So how do we monitor, measure and monitor the corrective actions? So KPIs. So what KPIs should you add? So what 2 types of measures that we have? So process and outcome, excellent. So what are the difference of process measure and outcome measure? So process check, yes, Alia. It is implemented and the outcome will measure the success. Excellent. So process measure will assess the implementation of the process and it is faster than the outcome measure. The outcome measure will assess the outcome of the patient, as the example that we said before for the alcohol-based hand gel. 20% improvement in healthcare associated infections transmitted by staff-patient encounter. Who should be responsible for implementing the action?
One thing to add, Dr. Rakan, what do you think about structure measures? So sometimes most of the time it's in the process or in the outcome. But sometimes when you identify or analyze the event, you found out that you don't have even a structure for for the operation room, for example, structure measure. So sometimes even a structure measure may play a role, but mostly it's a process and outcome.
Okay. So who's responsible for implementing the actions? Nahla is saying accountable person, head of OR. So this is a great comment, head of OR. Do you think that the investigating team should implement the action themselves, or the quality and patient safety should implement the action themselves? Okay, Dr. Muhammad is saying no, but somebody is saying yes. Who is it? Alia. So there should be a policy in place who should implement the action, but usually it is the responsibility of the department itself to implement the actions. The quality and patient safety, they can help in implementing these actions. Leadership should support the department in implementing this action. And I had a great comment from Rodimel. So it is better, and from Fatima, it is better to be someone involved in the process to monitor the implementation of action, and should be a single person, as we said, assigned individual for each action. It's not a committee, so the responsibility does not dilute. I think this wraps up our workshop. Thank you all for attending the SPSC workshop. I hope you benefit from this workshop. It is a great pleasure for us to present it. I would appreciate it if you fill the survey at the end of this training workshop. When you close the Zoom, it will appear to you in the browser. Your honest review is highly appreciated. So let's take some questions before we close. What will you do if a root cause is difficult to solve in the medium to short term, staff shortage that requires training of staff in the long term? So I don't think this can be solved by the quality and patient safety department by themselves. That's why we said leadership support is the most important thing. Leadership will provide the resources needed to implement the action plans. So engaging them early in the RCA process, engaging them frequently in the RCA meetings is of utmost importance to successfully implement the actions. I hope I answered the question clearly. Process modification, clinical review department. Okay, so there are no more questions. How many meetings in general are recommended to ensure a robust RCA? So do you think one meeting is enough? Do you think two meetings are enough? So one meeting you will meet, you will formulate your questions and go for interview. So after the interview, don't you need to gather the team to review these interviews? So as Asma said, and Muhammad, it depends on the situation. Sometimes you need 4 or 5. Sometimes you need only 3 meetings to come up with your corrective action plans. What is important is that you do not meet until you have a clear agenda, you set a time frame, and you submit your report to the governing sector within 30 to 45 days. So this is the role of the facilitator, to facilitate these meetings if there is a need for additional meetings, it should be held. After coming up with the corrective action plans and submitting the report, you can even meet to monitor the implementation of action plans. So 1, 2, 3, it depends on the situation, but in my personal opinion, 2 is the least, is the lowest number of meetings that the RCA team needs to come up with an RCA report. Is it enough that the Director of Medical Affairs attend the meeting, or should be somebody from the leadership office itself? So it is preferably reported to the CEO or board members, because they have the authority to take action, provide the resources, and approve or disapprove the actions that come from the RCA investigation itself. But if for example, Director of Medical Affairs have a connection or appointed by the CEO, why not? If our report is not implemented and same mistake happened, what you suggest? So this should be highlighted to the leadership, that this action have happened again. It might be the true root causes were not identified clearly, or all of them were not identified, or the corrective action plans are not the correct ones, or they were the correct ones and not implemented correctly. So these might be the reasons for a repeated or a recurring event. So Fatma is asking, meet all the person alone or together? So each individual should be interviewed alone. 1 or 2 of the team members should meet him only, not all the team members, so he should feel safe and not being interrogated or threatened. Unexperienced doctors and lack of some resources, recurrent cause in our far areas for mishappen. How can we resolve? I answered this question just now. True root causes, training is a weak action. Leadership support is the most important step in this to not reoccur. I think this settles our workshop. Thank you all for attending again. Please provide us with your honest feedback in the survey that will show to you after closing this workshop. I hope we can meet again in a future workshop. Thank you so much.